The sun came up. I opened my eyes. Dust drifted down from the cracks in the rafters, settling in a fine layer on my blanket. I sat up, and my bones made a sound like a handful of gravel being shaken. When you get old, you're like a worn-out machine. Every move is a step closer to falling apart. I got out of bed and pulled on the old, faded blue robe. The hem was covered in patches I'd sewn myself, the stitches crooked and clumsy. Elijah always said I didn't have the hands for needlework. It's been 80 years since he left, but I still remember his words. I walked to the main hall and pushed open the heavy, groaning door. Sunlight streamed in, illuminating a universe of floating dust. A crack ran down the face of the old wooden statue, and the offering box before it was thick with ash. I picked up the broom and began to sweep. I swept the dust and fallen leaves into a pile in the corner. It was the same day after day. When I finished, I took a rag, dipped it in the rainwater collected in the barrel from last night's storm, and began to wipe down the statue. I moved slowly, carefully, from its weathered face to its carved hands and down to the hem of its robe. As I worked, I talked to it. It's a clear day. The road down the mountain should be easy enough to travel. The offering box has a few more dollars in it. Almost full. Elijah, when are you coming back? The statue didn't answer. It never did. After cleaning the statue, I wiped down the empty cushion next to it. That was Elijah's spot. For 80 years, I've kept it spotless, as if he might walk in and sit down at any second. Just then, a commotion echoed from beyond the chapel gate. The voice was sharp, a woman's. "Oh my God, what is this road? My shoes are ruined. I knew we shouldn't have come to this godforsaken place. There's not even any service." I put down the rag and walked to the entrance. A young woman was standing at the bottom of the stone steps, one hand on her hip, the other holding some black contraption up to the sky. She wore a bright yellow jacket, and her hair was dyed a fiery red that clashed with the muted gray of the mountain path. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Hey, old man, are you the only one in this dump?" I nodded. She clattered up the steps and stopped right in front of me. A cloud of perfume washed over me, a scent I wasn't used to. She was so close I could see the fine hairs on her cheeks. "This chapel is falling apart. Can people actually live here?" she asked, wrinkling her nose as she looked around. "They can," I said. "Jesus." She shook her head, and the thing in her hand suddenly started buzzing. "All right, let's get a shot of you. Time to introduce you to a little thing called high-tech." The black object lifted into the air, circling over my head. I tilted my head back, watching it intrigued. "Look at the camera! Smile," the woman shouted. I didn't know what a camera was, and I didn't smile. The machine flew higher, making a slow circle around the chapel roof before heading toward the woods behind the building. The woman stared down at a screen in her hands, muttering to herself, "Higher, go higher. Get a panoramic shot. This'll get a ton of likes on Instagram." Suddenly, she yelped. "Shit, lost the signal." The image on her screen flickered and went black. The buzzing machine, like a kite with its string cut, tumbled out of the sky and disappeared into the gorge behind the chapel. "My drone," she screamed, pointing a finger at my face. You're going to pay for that." I looked at her without a word. I went back to my small room and felt under the bed for a wooden box. It was locked. I wore the key on a string around my neck. I opened it and took out a cloth bundle, unwrapping it layer by layer. Inside was a collection of loose change, worn-out dollar bills, and a few wrinkled 20s and 50s. This was the money I had saved for 80 years. Elijah said it would take a lot of money to fix up the chapel and make it grand. I held the bundle out to her. She glanced at it and sneered. "That's it. Are you kidding me? My drone cost a few $1,000s. She shoved my hand away dismissively and went back to fiddling with the screen. She mashed a few buttons, cursing under her breath. "It's frozen. Come on, reboot." The screen flickered to life, then settled on a single image. It was the last photo the drone had taken before it crashed. The color drained from the woman's face. She held the screen up to me, pointing at a corner of the image. What is that?" I leaned in to look. The photo showed the bottom of the deep, shadowed gorge. And there, in the darkness, was a speck of white. It stood out like the corner of something. "Is it a rock?" she wondered aloud. I stared at that speck of white, and my heart gave a sudden lurch. Elijah had told me never to go into the backwoods. He said it was dangerous. "I don't care. I have to go look," the woman said, shoving the controller into her bag. She had a look on her face like she wasn't afraid of anything. I shook my head. You can't go, I said. Why not? That thing was my baby, cost me $2,000. It's probably smashed, but what if it's not? She glared at me. You know something, don't you? What's down there? Elijah said it's dangerous. I repeated. Elijah? Who the hell is Elijah? Some guy from 100 years ago. You're still listening to him? She was losing her patience. Look, old man, stay out of it. I'm going myself. She started toward the path leading into the woods. I grabbed her arm. It was thin and smooth, completely different from my own weathered skin. Let go, she struggled. No, my grip was strong. She couldn't break free. I had watched over this chapel for 80 years. I couldn't let anyone go back there. You, what is wrong with you? She said, her voice rising. Then pay me. Pay me right now. I have no money, I said. Give me your offering box. That's for restoring the chapel. The place is a ruin. What's the point of restoring it now? She yelled, her voice cracking as if she was about to cry. I don't care. You have to give me an answer today. We were to stand off. She yelled. I stood my ground, my hand clamped firmly on her arm. Finally, her energy ran out, and she slumped to the ground. Fine. You have to come with me. If something happens, you're my backup. I thought for a moment, then nodded. If I went with her, at least I could keep an eye on her, make sure she didn't do anything foolish. What's your name? She asked. Abel. Abel, like you're able to do what? Guard a tomb. She snorted with laughter, then covered her mouth as if realizing her mistake. Guard the chapel, I said. She stood up, brushing the dirt from her pants. I'm Maya. She held out a hand. Look, let's just call a truce, old man. You lead the way. I didn't shake her hand. I turned and started down the path into the backwoods, a trail almost completely swallowed by weeds. I hadn't set foot on this path in 80 years. The day Elijah left, he stood at this very spot and told me, Abel, you watch over the chapel. Don't go anywhere, especially not into the gorge. There are monsters back there that eat people. I was only 7. The words terrified me, and I cried. For 80 years, I believe him. The path was treacherous. Thorn bushes tore at my robe and left long scratches on Maya's bright yellow jacket. She complained the whole way, first about the rocks bruising her feet, then about the swarms of mosquitoes. Was your Elijah crazy, living in a godforsaken place like this? I ignored her. After about half an hour of walking, we reached the edge of a cliff. Maya peered over the edge and sucked in a sharp breath. Holy hell, it's a long way down. Near the edge of the cliff stood a stone marker. It was ancient, covered in moss. I walked over and brushed away the green carpet, revealing 2 words carved deep into the rock. Go back. Elijah had carved them. The letters were cut deep, as if with all the strength he had. Maya leaned in to look. Go back? Your master carved this? A little dramatic, don't you think? She pulled out her controller again. Let's see. The drone should have gone down right around here. I stared at the stone marker, a storm of feelings brewing inside me. Elijah, what did you want me to turn back from? Was it danger, or was it something else? I reached out and gently touched the cold stone. The moment my fingertips made contact, a sharp pain shot through my head. The cliff, Maya, the stone marker, they all vanished. Before me stood Elijah. He was here, his back to me. His hand was resting on this very stone, unmoving. His frame was thin, his robe fluttering in the wind. He stood there for a long, long time, until he seemed to become a statue himself. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his emotion. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't fear. It was sorrow. A deep, soul-crushing sorrow. Abel. Hey, old man, what's wrong with you? Maya's voice pulled me back. I shook my head, and the vision was gone. I looked at her. She was watching me, her face etched with concern. You were just standing there, staring into space. It's nothing, I said. My hand was still on the stone. Its cold touch and the image of Elijah's back were seared into my mind. Elijah, what were you looking at when you stood here all those years ago? No way. It's too steep. There's no getting down there, Maya said, shaking her head at the cliff face. She pulled a coil of rope from her backpack and dangled it in front of me. But I came prepared. I brought my professional gear. You wait here. I'm going down to get my baby back. It's too dangerous, I said. Don't worry, I do outdoor rock climbing. She puffed out her chest, full of confidence. You just hold the rope for me up here. Be my anchor." She began to expertly secure the rope, tying one end to a thick tree nearby. She moved with a swift, practiced efficiency that didn't match her city girl appearance. "All right, old man, come over here. Wrap this rope around your waist a few times and hold on tight. I'm trusting you with my life." I did as she said. The thick rope bit into my waist. She double-checked her knots, gave me a thumbs up, then turned and began to rappel down the cliff face. Her figure quickly vanished into the dense foliage below. The mountain was quiet, filled only with the sound of the wind and the occasional cry of a bird. I stood at the edge of the cliff, holding the rope, unmoving. Time passed slowly. My mind was filled with the image of Elijah's back. Why was he so sorrowful? What was he leaving behind? I found it. Maya's excited shout drifted up from below. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. A few minutes later, she scrambled back over the edge, sweating and streaked with dirt. In her hand, she held the black contraption, now smashed to pieces. "Well, it's totaled," she said, stroking the broken drone mournfully. "At least the memory card is okay." She popped a tiny card out of the drone, pulled a tablet from her bag, and inserted the card. "Let's see what treasure we captured in its final moments." I leaned over to watch. On the screen, photos flashed by in quick succession. Most were the mountain landscape, gray and unremarkable. Then came an aerial shot of the chapel, with my small figure sweeping the entrance. "Hey, that's actually a pretty artistic shot," Maya muttered. She kept scrolling. Suddenly, she stopped. It was the one. The last photo, taken as the drone spun wildly in its descent. The angle was bizarre, upside down, but the image was clear. At the bottom of the gorge was a field of jagged rocks, and among the rocks lay a human skeleton. It was posed as if it had been walking forward, one foot in front of the other, one arm outstretched, as if reaching for something. It looked like it had been walking, fell, and never got up again. Maya and I both held our breath. Who is that?" Maya's voice trembled. I didn't speak. My eyes were locked on that skeleton. Beneath the bones, something was pinned. It was wrapped in oilcloth, and though the photo was blurry, I could see the metallic glint of a corner. "We should call the police," I said. They were the heaviest words I'd spoken in 80 years. Maya stared at me, then back at the photo, and nodded numbly. She took out her phone, pacing along the cliff edge until she found a sliver of service. "Hello, 911. I want to report something. We're on Blue Crow Mountain at the gorge behind the old chapel. We found a skeleton." Her voice echoed in the vast emptiness of the mountain. I turned away. I couldn't look at the photo anymore, couldn't look at the cliff. I looked back down the path we had come from. "Elijah, you didn't want me to come here, not because of some monster. It was because you were here, right? You've been here all along." I guarded a ruined chapel, waiting for a pile of bones. The thought was a knife twisting in my heart. The pain was so sharp it was hard to breathe. The world spun around me. I felt like I was going to collapse. 80 years. Every day, I swept the floor, wiped the statue, and talked to an empty cushion. I saved money, dreaming of fixing the chapel to make it grand for your return. I thought you had gone somewhere far away, on some important mission. I thought one day you would push open that groaning door and say, "Abel, I'm back." But you never left. You were at the bottom of this gorge, lying here for 80 years. I waited for you for 80 years. Were you in this place, waiting for me too? The police and a team of archaeologists arrived the next morning. They came in a few green SUVs, driving up the winding mountain road to the chapel gate. The doors opened and a crowd of people got out, uniformed officers and experts carrying toolboxes. They cordoned off the backwoods. Yellow police tape was strung up, enclosing the chapel and me inside it. As the one who found the body, Maya was taken aside by a female officer to give a statement. Before she left, she looked back at me, her expression a mixture of pity and confusion. I wasn't taken anywhere. They just told me to stay in the chapel and not to wander off. I sat on the threshold of the main hall, watching the people come and go in the direction of the gorge. They set up equipment, some of them rappelled down the cliff. The crackle and hiss of walkie-talkies filled the air. It all felt like a dream. No, it was more absurd than a dream. For 80 years, I had guarded a lie I had built for myself. I told myself Elijah had gone on a long journey. I told myself he was a man of spirit, one who comes and goes like the wind. I was just a simple man who needed to be patient. Now, the lie was shattered. I was a fool who had lived for nearly a century. Sir, a voice spoke beside me. I looked up to see a middle-aged man with glasses. He had a friendly face and a camera hanging around his neck. "Are you the caretaker here?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not the caretaker. I just watch the place." "I see," he said, sitting down next to me. "I'm a reporter with the Asheville Chronicle. Name's Mark Peterson. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions." I looked at him, but didn't say anything. "How long have you lived here?" 80 years. Mr. Peterson paused, adjusting his glasses. 80 years. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you? 97. My God, he breathed. "And you've lived here alone this whole time?" I nodded. "Do you have any idea who the person in the gorge might be?" I fell silent. I didn't know how to answer. Could I say it was my master? Would they believe that a man who died 80 years ago was my master? "Elijah," I whispered, so quietly only I could hear. "I'm sorry." Mr. Peterson leaned closer. I said, "I don't know." He seemed disappointed, but pressed on. "Can you tell me what this chapel used to be like?" I imagine it must have been quite busy. Busy, I remembered. When Elijah first found me, the chapel was still in good shape. The statue was gilded, and incense burned constantly in the censer. People came from all over to pray for peace for children. Elijah was still young then, with thick eyebrows and bright eyes. He would interpret fortunes for visitors and tell stories to the children. Then, the trouble started. Refugees from the valley started coming up the mountain. They were dressed in rags, their faces gaunt with hunger. Elijah took all the chapel's food reserves, set up a large pot, and made soup for them. Then, the company men came. They carried rifles and took whatever they wanted, hurt whoever got in their way. Elijah hid the refugees in a cave deep in the woods. Then he put on a clean robe, took his carved wooden sword, and stood at the chapel gate. That night, the glow of fire lit up half the sky. I hid in the cave, too scared to make a sound. I heard shouting, and I heard Elijah's roar of defiance. By dawn, everything was quiet. I waited for a long time, but Elijah didn't come back. I ran back to the chapel. Half of it was burned, and the face of the statue was blackened with soot. There was blood on the ground and bodies, but Elijah wasn't among them. I asked the refugees where he had gone. They all shook their heads. One old man told me he saw Elijah running toward the backwoods with his wooden sword, the company men chasing after him. From that day on, I began to wait. I went to the head of the mountain path every day, waiting from sunrise to sunset. I waited for 3 days without sleeping. I collapsed. When I woke up, I was in the arms of an old woman from the village. She told me to stop waiting, that he wasn't coming back. I didn't believe her. I said, "He promised he would come back." The old woman just sighed and said nothing more. After that, I stayed, guarding this ruined chapel. I never went down the mountain again. I thought Elijah had gone into hiding, that he would return when the trouble passed. I held on to that single hope. I guarded it for 80 years. "Sir, sir," Mr. Peterson's voice pulled me from my memories. "Are you all right? You look pale." I shook my head. "I'm tired," I said. "Of course. I'll let you rest. I won't disturb you any further." Mr. Peterson stood up and handed me a business card. "This is my card. If you change your mind, please give me a call." I took the card without looking at it and tucked it into my robe. I looked toward the gorge. They had hoisted the skeleton up on a stretcher and covered it with a white sheet. A group of people stood around it, pointing and talking. My vision blurred. "Elijah, I found you. But I never wanted it to be like this." They brought the skeleton into the main hall and placed it on the floor in front of the statue. The room was suddenly packed with people. Police officers, experts, reporters who had gotten wind of the story. Camera flashes went off constantly, the clicking sound giving me a headache. I sat in a corner, watching from a distance. The stretcher was like an altar, and the person lying on it was the God I had waited for my entire life. "Excuse me, please make some room." A man who looked like an expert pushed his way through, carrying a toolbox. "Everyone, please don't get too close. We need to preserve the scene." The crowd parted. The expert pulled on white gloves and a mask, then knelt and carefully lifted a corner of the white sheet. I glanced once, then quickly looked away. It was a section of a shin bone, still caked with dried mud. 80 years. Preliminary assessment indicates the time of death was approximately 80 years ago, the expert said to a camera. The deceased is a male, estimated to be between 30 and 40 years of age. There are clear marks from a sharp weapon on the bones, which were likely the cause of death. Can you determine his identity? A reporter shouted. That will require further investigation. We did find some items near the body. He held up an evidence bag. Inside was a rusted, carved wooden sword. The blade was broken in two. My heart sank. It was Elijah's sword. He treasured that sword, polished it every day. He said it had been passed down from his own master, that it could ward off evil. I remember when he taught me how to use a staff, holding my hands, showing me the movements one by one. Abel, he had said, remember, for men like us, a weapon is not for killing. It is for protecting. Protecting what? I had asked, looking up at him. Protecting those who need it. Now, the sword meant to protect others was broken. There's another piece of evidence, the expert said, holding up a second bag. This one contained an oilcloth pouch. The cloth was rotting away, but its contents were intact. It was a small stack of silver dollars, neatly stacked, maybe a dozen or so. These have been identified as currency from the 1930s, the expert explained. What's strange is that it appears the deceased never spent a single one. He never spent a dime. I laughed. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. Elijah, you magnificent fool. You left all the money for me, and you went to the most dangerous place without a penny to your name. Did you think that by leaving me the money, I would be able to survive? I don't know. In all the days without you, I never truly lived a single one. Make way, make way. A few more people pushed into the room. The one in the lead was a police officer holding a small, clear plastic bag. Forensics has a new discovery. All eyes turned to the small bag. Inside was what looked like some kind of powder. This was extracted from between the subject's finger bones, the officer said, his expression grim. At the time of death, he was clutching something tightly in his hand. The object had decomposed, and these fragments were all we could recover. He paused, then continued. Using the latest technology, we've managed to piece together and scan these fragments. Now, if you'll all look at the screen, a projector screen had been set up in the hall. It lit up, displaying a photo. It was a piece of yellowed paper, shattered into countless tiny pieces. There were faint markings on it. Through computer enhancement, the markings slowly came into focus. They were words, written in pencil. The handwriting was shaky and crooked, like a child's. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that handwriting. It was mine. From when I was 7, when Elijah taught me to write my name. He said my purpose was to guard this chapel, so he named me Abel. I had practiced for a long time before I managed to write that sentence on a piece of yellowed paper. On the screen, the words were now perfectly clear. Wait for Elijah to come back. Build the grandest, new chapel. A dead silence fell over the hall. Every eye in the room turned from the screen to me. In that moment, I felt like a monkey stripped naked and put on display for a crowd. My secret, the secret I had guarded for 80 years, was laid bare for everyone to see. Wait for Elijah to come back. Build the grandest new chapel. Mr. Peterson, the reporter, murmured the words, then his head snapped toward me, his eyes wide with shock and sympathy. Sir, did you write this? I didn't answer. I got to my feet and walked, step by step, toward the skeleton. The crowd parted for me, creating a path. I knelt beside the stretcher, looking at the white sheet. I wanted to lift it, but I was afraid. I was afraid to see the face I had longed for every day. But it wasn't a face anymore, just a collection of cold, lifeless bones. Elijah. I called his name softly. I'm back. I saved a lot of money. It's enough to build a very grand chapel. Please, just come back. My tears fell, one by one, onto the white sheet, spreading into small, dark patches. 80 years. It was the first time I had cried in front of anyone. I cried like a child, like the 7-year-old boy who couldn't find his way home. The people around me just watched. Their eyes held pity, compassion, curiosity. But I didn't care. In my world, there was nothing left but the skeleton in front of me. He was your master? A police officer knelt beside me and asked gently. I nodded. 80 years ago, he led the company men away to protect the people hiding here. He never came back. The officer was silent for a moment. He patted my shoulder. Sir, you've endured a great deal. We found his belongings, the officer continued, gesturing to the silver dollars and the broken sword. And this note. He was holding onto the note you wrote. Even as he died, he never forgot you. He was always thinking about coming back, about building the chapel with you. My tears flowed harder. So, it wasn't that Elijah didn't want to come back. It was that he couldn't. He fell on the road home, and in his hand, he held my hope. He held the promise we made together. We checked the local archives and historical records, the officer went on. There was indeed a violent incident here 80 years ago. The records are sparse, but they mention a group of armed men from a mining company who came up the mountain and were stopped by a man from the chapel. Most of the local people survived, but the man from the chapel was never seen again. What was his name? I asked. It was the first time I had ever asked for Elijah's name. When he found me, he just told me to call him Master. He never told me his name. The officer shook his head. It's not in the records. He's like an unsung hero. An unsung hero. I turned the words over in my mind. Yes, that was Elijah. He would do the greatest good and never ask for recognition. All he left behind was a boy named Abel and a ruined chapel. For the next few days, I didn't speak. I sat in the main hall every day, watching over the bones. The experts came and went. The police finished their work. They took the skeleton away, saying it needed further analysis before it could be given a proper burial. The chapel was quiet again, except now, next to the empty cushion, there was another empty space. Maya left. Before she went, she tried to give me a thick envelope of cash, saying it was compensation. I refused. She stuffed it into the offering box anyway. Mr. Peterson's article was published. The headline read, "For 80 years, I guarded a ruined chapel and waited for my master." In the article, he wrote about me, about Elijah, about the yellowed note, and the unspent silver dollars. Overnight, my story went viral. The chapel's old rotary phone, long silent, started ringing off the hook. It was all reporters wanting to interview me. I didn't answer. I unplugged the line from the wall. Soon, the base of the mountain became a busy place. Cars lined the road as people drove up to see the ruined chapel. They took pictures of the main hall, the statue, the empty cushion. They dropped money in front of me. Donations. Offerings. For the first time, my offering box was full to the brim. I looked at all that money, but I felt no joy. Elijah, the box is full. But where are you? 7. They were going to rebuild the chapel. Mr. Peterson was the one who brought the news. He said my story had moved many people. A wealthy businessman read the article and decided to donate a large sum of money to help me build the grandest new chapel. Sir, this is wonderful news. Mr. Peterson was beaming. The wish you and your master shared can finally come true. I looked at him and shook my head. This isn't the chapel I want. Then what kind of chapel do you want? I wanted the chapel that still had Elijah in it. It could be ruined, ancient, but as long as he was there, it was the best chapel in the world. Mr. Peterson was taken aback. But Elijah's wish wasn't to build a grand chapel, I said. His wish was for me to live a good life. But you guarded this place, waited for him for 80 years. Wasn't it all to fulfill this promise? I was silent. Yes, I had guarded the promise. But now that it was being fulfilled, why wasn't I happy? Because the person I made the promise with was gone. It's like you save your whole life to buy the perfect gift for the person you love most. But by the time you can afford it, they're no longer there. What meaning does the gift have then? Seeing my silence, Mr. Peterson sighed. Sir, I know you're grieving. But this place was his life's work, and it's been your life's vigil. It shouldn't be left to crumble. Giving it a new life would be a way to honor him, don't you think? I didn't argue anymore. I knew I couldn't stop it. Just like I couldn't stop Maya from going into the gorge, and I couldn't stop Elijah from charging at those men with his wooden sword. Some things are just meant to be. A few days later, the construction crew arrived. They came in big trucks, hauling bricks, cement, and lumber. The chapel was suddenly filled with noise. The whine of power saws, the hammering of nails, the shouting of the workers. The creaking door I had pushed open for 80 years was torn from its hinges and tossed aside. The statue was wrapped in plastic, waiting to be regilded. Everything I knew was disappearing. I was an outsider, watching them tear my home apart piece by piece. I had nowhere to go. I could only sit on a large rock on the summit, watching from a distance. The workers were friendly. Seeing my age, they'd offer me a cigarette and chat. Old-timer, you're really something. staying up here for 80 years. Once the new chapel is built, you'll be the head abbot. How about that? I would just smile and say nothing. At night, the workers went back down the mountain. The chapel was quiet again. I walked back to my little room. They hadn't torn it down yet. They said they'd leave it for last. I lay in bed, unable to sleep. I closed my eyes and saw Elijah. He was standing before me, looking as young as I remembered. His brow was furrowed, as if he were scolding me. Abel, how could you let them tear our home apart? Elijah, I sat up. I couldn't stop them. You foolish boy, he sighed. Home isn't a building. Home is where the people you care about are. But you're not here. I've always been here. He pointed to my chest. Right here. I pressed a hand to my heart. It felt hollow. Elijah, I miss you. I know. His form began to fade. Abel, go do what you need to do. Stop waiting for me. What I need to do. You know. He vanished. I sat in the darkness, thinking for a long time. What did I need to do? I needed to bring Elijah home. Not to this glittering new chapel, but back to our broken, old home that belonged to just us. But wasn't his home at the bottom of that gorge? I stood up and walked out of my room. The moonlight was bright, illuminating the mountain path. I walked toward the backwoods. This was the second time I'd come here. I walked to the stone marker that read, "Go back." I caressed the letters Elijah had carved. Elijah, did you want me to stop because you didn't want me to find you, or because you didn't want me to see what had become of you? You foolish man. I walked around the marker and continued on. Elijah had walked this path. I would walk it too. I wanted to walk the path he walked, to feel what he felt. 8. The path was even more difficult than I remembered. Thorns and jagged rocks were everywhere. I fell several times, cutting myself in the sharp stones until I was bleeding, but I felt no pain. My mind was consumed by a single thought: find Elijah's road home. I walked for a long time, so long that the moon began to set. As dawn broke, I came to a sheer drop. This must have been the place where Elijah went over the edge. Below, the gorge was filled with swirling mist, its bottom invisible. I stood at the edge and looked down. Elijah, were you afraid when you fell? I don't think you were. You weren't afraid of death. What else was there to fear? I sat on the ground to rest. The sun rose, its golden light piercing through the mist, bathing the mountainside. And then I saw it. On the cliff face across the chasm, there was a barely visible path. It snaked its way down to the valley floor. It wasn't a natural path. It had been carved by human hands. I stood up, studying it closely. I could see stones that had been deliberately flattened and hollows that could serve as footholds. Had Elijah made this path? Why would he build such a thing? I walked along the cliff's edge, searching for the entrance to the path. After a long search, I found a small opening hidden behind a thick curtain of vines. The opening was tiny, just big enough for one person to squeeze through. I crawled inside. It was a narrow tunnel, pitch black. I felt my way along the rock wall, shuffling forward one step at a time. After about 100 feet, I saw a sliver of light ahead. I emerged from the tunnel and found myself standing on the cliffside path. It was even more treacherous than it looked from afar. In some places, there was no path at all, only a few jutting rocks that required you to climb like a monkey. I understood. This wasn't a road home. This was a road to a secret. What secret had Elijah hidden at the bottom of this gorge? I made my way down carefully. Every step was deliberate, solid. I don't know how long I walked, but finally my feet touched solid ground. I was at the bottom of the gorge. It was much wider than it seemed from above. A small stream trickled through the rocks, and wildflowers I didn't know the names of grew along its banks. The air was thick with the damp, earthy smell of the ravine. I followed the stream deeper into the gorge. Before long, I saw a cave. The mouth of the cave was blocked by a massive boulder. There were words carved into the rock. The characters were faded, but I could still make them out. Forbidden. Elijah's handwriting again. Elijah, what were you hiding? I walked around the boulder and found a small crack. I lay on the ground and peered through it. The cave was dark, and I couldn't see anything, but I could smell something. A familiar scent. The smell of incense, and a faint, herbal scent of medicine. My heart stirred. Elijah had been here, and not just once. I tried to push the boulder. It didn't budge. I was old. My strength was gone. I sat on the ground, catching my breath. Was I going to give up just like that? No, I couldn't. I got up and started searching the area. If Elijah could get in, there had to be a way. Near the cave entrance, I found a thick vine. One end was tied to a large tree. The other disappeared into the crack beneath the boulder. I pulled on the vine and felt a slight vibration from the other end. A mechanism. I followed the vine and found a lever hidden in the undergrowth. I threw my weight onto the lever. With a deep groan, the boulder blocking the entrance shifted, opening a gap just wide enough for a person to pass through. My heart pounded in my chest. I slipped inside. The cave was larger than I expected. In the center was a stone platform. On the platform, an oil lamp was burning. The oil was nearly gone, its flame flickering, threatening to go out at any moment. Beneath the lamp sat a wooden box. I walked over and opened it. There was no gold or silver inside, only a yellow journal and a photograph of a woman. 9. The woman in the photograph was wearing a student's dress, her hair in 2 long braids. She had a sweet smile. Her eyes, her features, they looked a little like mine. I picked up the journal and opened it to the first page. The handwriting was Elijah's. Strong and clear. July 7th, 1945. Clear skies. Today is the day June and I were married. Her smile is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I told her I would never fail her. She said she believed me. June. Was that the woman in the photograph? I read on. August 15th. Rain. The company men came through the valley. They burned everything. I brought June and some of the townsfolk up to Blue Crow Mountain to hide. She is with child, and I worry for her health. September 1 SD. Overcast. The food is running out. June gives her share to the children. She's getting thinner. It hurts my heart to see. September 20th. A rainy night. They found us. I had June lead the others to the secret cave in the backwoods. I found it years ago. It's defensible, and there's a hidden tunnel that leads down the other side of the mountain. I told her to wait for me, that I would be right back. She said she believed me. My hand started to tremble. Elijah wasn't alone. He had a wife and a child on the way. Then what was I? Just an orphan he picked up. I took my wooden sword and ran out. I couldn't let them find June. I had to lead them away. I ran east toward the cliffs. A dead end. I just wanted to draw them as far away as possible. I was shot 3 times. The bleeding wouldn't stop. I knew I wasn't going to make it. I collapsed at the edge of the gorge. I saw them coming, laughing. With my last bit of strength, I rolled over the edge. I thought I was dead, but I wasn't. I landed in a tree, which broke my fall. I must have passed out. When I awoke, it was morning. I was in a cave. June had found me. She was crying. She said she came looking for me, saw me fall, and climbed down the cliffside path. I carved that path myself, years ago, to gather rare herbs. I never thought it would save both our lives. I was dying. I knew it. I was bleeding out. June said she would save me. She pulled out a bundle from her coat. It held all our savings and a few gold pieces I had set aside for the baby. She told me to take it and escape through the hidden tunnel. To live. I refused. I told her I'm a dead man. The money is no use to me. You and the child must live. That's more important than anything. We argued for a long time. In the end, she agreed. I divided the money. I left half for her. The other half, I asked her to take to a boy at the chapel. An orphan I found 6 months ago. 7 years old, thin, quiet. I named him Abel. I told June, if I don't make it back, tell Abel to watch the chapel and wait for me. Maybe we'll give him a reason to keep going. She agreed. Through her tears, I wrote a note. The sentence I taught Abel to write, though he still struggled with it. Wait for Elijah to come back. Build the grandest new chapel. I put the note with my wooden sword. I kept the silver dollars for myself. I thought, if I die, let this be my contribution to Abel's chapel. I held on long enough to see her to the tunnel. I watched her disappear into the darkness. I came back to the cave, back to this stone platform. I knew my time was short. June, my love, if there is another life, I will not fail you. Abel, my foolish boy, I'm sorry. Your master lied to you. I can't come back. Don't wait for me. Live a good life. The journal ended there. The next few pages were blank. On the very last page, there was a single sentence. It was written in blood. Let's name our daughter Grace, for the grace that will keep you safe. I slumped to the floor, the journal in my hand. Tears fell like rain. I wasn't abandoned. I was an entrustment. Elijah wasn't without attachments. He had a woman he loved and an unborn child. He sacrificed himself to protect them. And to give me a reason to live, he created a lie. He asked me to wait for him. He was afraid I would end up like him, living with hatred and pain. He wanted me to live with hope. Elijah, oh Elijah, how cruel you were, and how kind. I don't know how I made it out of that cave. When I came to my senses, I was standing on the cliff top. The sun was high in the sky, its glare making my eyes ache. I clutched the journal and the photograph in my hand. This was Elijah's secret, and now I knew it. What was I supposed to do? Tell the world? Tell them the hero wasn't some solitary man of the cloth, but an ordinary man with a wife and a child? Tell them he made me wait 80 years for a lie? No, I couldn't. This was Elijah's secret, June's secret, and Grace's secret. I would take it to my grave. I returned to the chapel. Construction was ongoing. The new building was already taking shape. Red walls, green tiles, soaring eaves. It was even grander than I had imagined. Mr. Peterson saw me and hurried over. "Sir, where have you been? We were looking all over for you." He glanced at the items in my hand. "What's that?" "Nothing." I tucked the journal and photo inside my robe, close to my chest. "You look terrible. Are you sick? I could take you down the mountain to a hospital." I shook my head. "I'm fine." I went back to my small room and closed the door. I lay on my bed and looked at the journal and the photograph again and again. I looked at June's smiling face, my heart aching with a bittersweet sorrow. "Elijah, you had good taste. She must have been a wonderful woman. And your child? The girl named Grace? Was she born? Did she grow up? Where is she now? Does she know she had a hero for a father?" The question spun in my mind. I made a decision. I would find her. It was Elijah's last wish. Let's name our daughter Grace. I had to find her and tell her that her father loved her, that he was a hero. I went down the mountain. It was the first time in 80 years I had willingly walked down Blue Crow Mountain. The world below was both familiar and strange. Skyscrapers, roaring traffic, people in strange clothes, holding glowing screens, rushing everywhere. I was an antique, a relic from another time, completely out of place. I went to the police station. I thought maybe they could help me find someone. "Sir, who are you looking for?" a young officer asked me. "I'm looking for someone named Grace," I said. "Grace? Full name? Age? Where's she from?" I shook my head. "I don't know. She would be about 80 years old. Her father. I don't know his name either." The officer looked at me like I was a senile old man. "Sir, that's not enough information. There's no way we can run a search." "Her mother's name was June," I added. "June? That's not a full name either." It was hopeless. I took the photograph from my robe and handed it to him. "This is all I know." The officer took the photo and studied it. "This picture is very old. Tell you what, I can scan it and put it in the system. If we get a hit, we'll let you know." I left my name, Abel, from the chapel on Blue Crow Mountain. Then I walked out of the police station. I didn't know who to look for or where to go. I was a lost soul, a ghost wandering the city streets. At night, I slept under a highway overpass. During the day, I walked aimlessly. I searched for a month. Nothing. I started to lose hope. Maybe Grace was gone. Maybe she had moved far away. Just as I was about to give up and return to the mountain, I got a call from the police station. "Is this Abel? We might have a lead for you." When I arrived at the station, the young officer was waiting for me. "Sir, you came." He looked excited. "We found a woman named Sarah Evans. Her great-granddaughter is named Anna." My heart leaped into my throat. "Where is she?" "The great-grandmother." "Please calm down," the officer said. "We contacted Mrs. Evans, but she didn't react to the name, June, or the photograph. She said she doesn't know the woman in the picture." My hope plummeted. Could it be a mistake? It's possible. "It was a long time ago, and memories fade," the officer said. "But her great-granddaughter, Anna, heard about this and wants to meet you. She said she'd like to see the photograph." "Where is she?" "She's waiting for you outside." I walked out of the station and saw a young woman. She was standing under a large oak tree, wearing a white dress, her long hair falling over her shoulders. When she saw me, she offered a polite smile. "You must be Abel," she said softly, walking toward me. I nodded. "My name is Anna," she said. "Anna." I looked at her face, then at the photograph in my hand. Her eyes, the line of her jaw, they were so much like June's, so much like Elijah's. "I'd like to see the photo," she said. I handed it to her. She took it and studied it for a long time. I think I think I've seen a similar photo among my great-grandmother's things, she said, looking up, her eyes filled with uncertainty. But the man in her photo was different. A different man? Yes. The photo my great-grandmother had was of two women. One of them was this woman here. I don't know the other one. My heart sank again. Was it all a mistake? But Anna added, before my great-grandmother passed, she kept repeating a name. What name? She kept saying, June. I'm so sorry. My head started spinning. What was your great-grandmother's name? Her name was Sarah. Sarah. I hadn't seen that name in the journal. What exactly did your great-grandmother tell you? I asked urgently. She didn't say much, Anna said, shaking her head. She was very confused by the end. Her words were all jumbled. She said she owed June her life. She said she should have been the one to die. She also said she had a daughter who was really June's, that she had to raise the girl right to make things up to June. My hands began to shake. A wild theory started to form in my mind. Was your great-grandmother ever in trouble on Blue Crow Mountain about 80 years ago? Anna's eyes widened. How did you know? My mother told me that when my great-grandmother was young, her hometown was destroyed by company thugs. She fled with relatives and hid for a while in an old chapel on Blue Crow Mountain. Was she pregnant at the time? Yes. My mom said my great-grandmother gave birth to my grandmother on that mountain. The truth. It was all there. I held the journal, my hands trembling so badly I could barely keep my grip. In the journal, Elijah wrote that he sent June away. But June never left. What happened to her after she went through the tunnel? Did she run into trouble? Did she entrust her child to Sarah? Take me to see your grandmother, I said to Anna. My grandmother. She passed away a few years ago. My heart sank once more. But Anna said she left behind a lot of her mother's journals. Maybe the answer is in there. I went with Anna to her home. She pulled a stack of old journals from a dusty chest. The covers were yellowed and brittle. I opened the first one. The handwriting was neat and delicate. It was Sarah's. September 20th, 1945. Rain. June and I and the others are hiding in the cave. Mr. Cole, the man from the chapel, went out. He said he would lead the company men away. June is so worried. She hasn't stopped crying. September 21 SD. Overcast. Mr. Cole didn't come back. June has decided to go look for him. She gave me all her money. She said she has two children to think of, the one in her belly and the boy at the chapel, Abel. She can't afford to die. She made me promise to look after Abel. She said if she doesn't return, I must tell her child that their father was a great hero. I promised. I watched her leave through the hidden tunnel. I was so scared. September 22 ND. Sunny. A full day has passed, and June hasn't returned. I'm so worried. I decided to go look. I went through the tunnel and saw blood near the cliff. I climbed down the small path and found Mr. Cole in a cave at the bottom of the gorge. He was dying. He gave me a journal and a photograph. He said they were for June. He told me his name was Elijah Cole. Elijah Cole. I finally knew my master's name. He said he thought something must have happened to June. He made me promise to find her, to protect her and the baby. I promised him through my tears. I buried him there, in the cave. I said, Mr. Cole, rest easy. I will find June. I climbed out of the gorge and searched for a long time. Finally, in a thicket of bushes, I found her. She had been attacked. She was gone. She was still clutching a small locket in her hand. I wept. Oh, June, I'm so sorry. It should have been me. I realized her baby was still alive. I had to save the child. Then I took her belongings and her unborn child and returned to the others through the tunnel. I told a lie. I told everyone that I had found Elijah and June, and that they had both died heroically, that I was the only one lucky enough to escape. I can't let the child know the truth of her birth. I will raise her as my own daughter. She will live a peaceful, safe life. I named her Grace, in memory of her mother and the grace that saved her. I closed the journal, tears streaming down my face. So that's what happened. A chain of sacrifice. Everyone protecting something with their life. Elijah protected the townsfolk. June protected her child. Sarah protected a promise. And I protected a lie. My grandmother, Anna said, her eyes red. She was June's child. Elijah Cole was her biological father, which makes me his great-granddaughter. I looked at Anna and nodded. Child, You had a hero for a great-grandfather. I gave Elijah's journal to Anna. It belonged to her. She held it for a long time, her tears soaking the brittle pages. I never imagined this was my family's story, she sobbed. I always thought I was just ordinary. You are the descendant of a hero, I said. We donated both journals and the photograph to the State Museum. They created a special exhibit for them called simply 80 Years. In the exhibit hall, they displayed Elijah's broken wooden sword, the silver dollars, the yellowed note with my childish handwriting, and the 2 journals and the photograph. At the center of the room stood a bronze statue. It depicted a man in a simple robe, holding a wooden sword, his face to the wind, his expression determined, his body striding forward. It was my master, Elijah Cole. The new chapel was finished. It was even more magnificent than planned, gilded and grand, with incense smoke curling toward the sky. Mr. Peterson, the businessman who donated the money, and many others attended the dedication ceremony. They invited me to stand in the center of the main hall. They gave me a brand new robe to wear. I looked at the unfamiliar faces around me, at their joyful expressions, at the newly gilded statue of the saint. I felt no happiness at all. This wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted was the broken-down old chapel, the one full of memories. What I wanted was for Elijah to sit beside me and talk. After the ceremony, the crowd began to disperse. I slipped away unnoticed. I went back to the gorge. I stood before the stone marker that read, "Go back." "Elijah, I've come to see you." I walked around the stone and onto the path that led to the cliff. This time, I wasn't looking for secrets. I was here to build a road. I would build a road from the base of the mountain all the way to the bottom of the gorge, to the place where my master rested. Elijah had carved that cliffside path to survive. I would pave it to bring him home. I found a quarry at the foot of the mountain. I used the money I had saved my entire life, the money from Maya, and the donations from Mr. Peterson and other kind people, and I bought countless slabs of bluestone. I hired a few workers to help me. It was hard work. The mountain was steep, and in many places, machinery couldn't reach. Everything had to be carried by hand. I was too old for heavy labor, but I was on the site every single day. I boiled water for the men, and I cooked their meals. I watched as they laid the stone slabs, one by one, along the mountain path. It took a full year to build the road. It stretched from the foot of Blue Crow Mountain all the way to the top of the cliff behind the chapel. And from the cliff top, it followed the treacherous path all the way down to the valley floor. The day the road was finished, I stood at the bottom of the gorge, looking at the smooth stone path that now connected this place to the world outside. My heart felt empty. I paid the workers and sent them on their way. I sat alone at the bottom of the gorge, in front of the cave. I took out the photocopies of the journal and the photograph. I set them on fire. The ashes danced in the wind like black butterflies. Elijah, June, Sarah, your sorrows, your sacrifices, they can end now. Dust to dust. You can rest. I stood up and brushed the dirt from my clothes. It was time for me to go. My entire life had been about waiting. Waiting for Elijah to come back. Waiting for the truth to be revealed. Waiting for the road to be finished. Now, I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. I walked up the stone path, one step at a time. I moved slowly. It felt like I was walking through all 100 years of my life. I passed the cliff, past the stone marker that read, "Go back." I walked back to the new chapel. It was empty. The incense and the censers had burned out. I entered the main hall and stood before the statue. Its face was serene and benevolent. But it wasn't my master. My master was Elijah Cole. He was a man of flesh and blood, who could love and hate, cry and laugh. A normal man. A hero. I knelt before the statue. My forehead touched the cold floor. "Elijah, I'm leaving. I'm not waiting for you anymore. If you miss me, you know where to find me." I stood up and walked away. I didn't look back. I walked down Blue Crow Mountain. I went to Anna's home. She was married now, with a beautiful little girl. She was overjoyed to see me. "Abel, you're here." I looked at her and smiled. "I come to say goodbye." "Goodbye. Where are you going?" "I don't know," I said. "Wherever the road takes me." I gave her the old wooden box filled with my life savings. "This is for you. For your daughter." "No, Abel, I can't take this." "Take it." I pressed the box into her hands. "This is what Elijah left for me. Now, I'm leaving it for his family. It's the last thing I have to do." Anna began to cry. She hugged me, not wanting to let go. Please don't go. Stay here with us. We'll take care of you. I patted her on the back. Silly child. I'm an old man. It's my time to wander. I gently broke free from her embrace and walked out the door. I didn't look back. I walked the city streets. The crowds, the traffic. This time, I didn't feel out of place. I was just a normal person now. A person whose mission was complete, who was free to walk his own path. I bought a train ticket. To anywhere. The destination didn't matter. What mattered was the journey. The train began to move. I watched the scenery blur past the window, retreating into the distance. Like the 100 years of my life. I leaned my head against the cool glass and slowly closed my eyes. I thought I could see him again. Elijah. He was standing in a field of sunlight, smiling at me. Abel, you came. I'm here, I said. Let's go home. Okay. When I woke up, I was lying in a field of grass. The sun was warm on my skin. Nearby, a small river flowed, its water gurgling softly. I had no idea where I was. I couldn't remember the train stopping or how I got off. I couldn't remember anything. I sat up. My body felt light. I looked at my hands. They were no longer the wrinkled, liver-spotted hands of an old man. They were the hands of a child, clean and strong. I stood up and stretched. My bones didn't creak and groan. They moved with a fluid, youthful energy. I walked to the river and knelt. The water reflected my face. It was the face of a 7-year-old boy. Thin, dark-skinned, with big, bright eyes. I was back. I was 7 again. This wasn't a dream. I could feel the wind on my cheeks, smell the scent of fresh grass, hear the river's song. It was all real. I walked along the riverbank. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked. After a long time, I saw a figure in the distance. A man in a faded blue robe, his back to me. He was at the river's edge, filling a bucket with water. His back was thin, but it was straight and strong. I stopped. My heart was hammering in my chest. I stared at him, my mouth open, but no sound came out. He finished filling the bucket and turned around. He saw me. He paused for a moment, then smiled. He had thick eyebrows and bright eyes. Well now, little one, what are you doing out here all by yourself? Where are your parents? I looked at him, and tears immediately welled in my eyes. I ran and threw my arms around his waist, holding on as tight as I could. Elijah, I sobbed a deep, wrenching cry. Elijah, I waited for you for 80 years. He froze. He held me, gently patting my back. 80 years. Little one, what are you talking about? It's me, Elijah. It's Abel. Abel. He smiled. That's a good, strong name. From now on, why don't you come with me? I looked up at him. You don't remember me? He shook his head. I've never seen you before in my life. My heart sank. He wasn't my Elijah. He was just a man who looked like him. Or perhaps he was my Elijah before he had ever met me. I let go of him. I'm sorry. I thought you were someone else. I turned to leave. Wait, he called after me. Where are you going? I don't know. Well then, he said, why don't you come with me? I could use an apprentice. We'll call you Abel. How does that sound? I turned back to look at him. His smile was so warm. Just like it was 80 years ago, the first time he found me in the snow. I nodded. Okay. I fell in a step behind him on the road home. It was a long road. But this time, I wasn't walking it alone. The path was lined with wildflowers. The sun was just right, and a gentle breeze was blowing.